Collaborate and thrive. At the Rising Tide Mastermind, collaboration is key. Work alongside like-minded professionals who are eager to share insights and strategies. Together, we achieve more. Join us and experience the power of collaboration. To find out more about the Rising Tide Mastermind, go to scalinguph2o.com/mastermind. Once again, that's scalinguph2o.com/mastermind. Find out if the Rising Tide Mastermind is right for you. Welcome to the Scaling Up H2O podcast, the podcast where we scale up on knowledge so we don't scale up our systems. I'm Trace Blackmore, the host of the Scaling Up H2O podcast. And Nation, we are at the time where if you have not taken down your holiday decorations, you have waited too long. Now, all those people out there that are on your homeowner association boards, my heart goes out to you. I am on my homeowners association board, and I have people complaining that other of my neighbors are not taking down their Christmas decorations when they're supposed to. Yes, that's what we talk about in board meetings. Folks, let me tell you, you got to be involved in those things because you never know what's going to happen if you're not involved. But not always the most productive of conversations happen. So I'm going to do a public service announcement for the entire Scaling Up Nation on holiday decorations. So here we go. Most people take down their decorations on Three Kings Day, which is January 6th. So I asked AI, it came back with that. They're eventually going to take over the world. So the robots know what they're talking about. And the robots told us that, hey, if it's past January 6th, and by the way, it is, your Christmas decorations are up too long. So if they're still up, maybe consider taking them down, because somebody like me will have to sit through a board meeting about your holiday decorations, and you don't want to put anybody through that. Also, a lot of us have personal preferences on when decorations go up and come down. I personally shared a story with you in the end of last year where my father-in-law, the last time we saw him was over Thanksgiving. We were not going to be able to get our holiday decorations up because of the travel that we were doing. So we had our decorations up before Thanksgiving, and he passed on the day after Thanksgiving. And he just thought it was so cool that we had decorations up for Thanksgiving. That's our new tradition. Before Thanksgiving, we have all of our holiday decorations up, and then we take them down New Year's Day. That is not because of me. That is because of my wife. She says that's enough. We are done. And then we spend the entire day boxing everything up. I got to tell you, I love it when the decorations are up. I cannot stand putting them up or taking them down. And I try to do a good job each and every year of making sure things are boxed properly, things are labeled properly, lights are wrapped properly, but it doesn't matter how much attention I put to that. It always does not come out of the box the way you want it to the following year. And I know lights are getting better, but we all know that there's always that strand of lights that you can't get to work, or there's that strand of lights that works when you test it, and then when you string it on the tree and you have to take the whole tree apart to get it out, it decides not to light. Why are lights so mean? I don't understand that. Well, for those of you that I haven't convinced to take your Christmas decorations down by now, please realize that there are some safety concerns, especially if you have a real tree. Those things dry out, and they are the number one cause of fire around the holiday season. So please make sure that you are taking safety in consideration first. Also, if you're still using those things, I'm sure they're utilizing energy, so your energy bill will probably appreciate you taking them down. And then finally, as I mentioned in the beginning, many neighborhoods have policies CCRs, conditions, covenants, and restrictions. Do I sound like I know what I'm talking about? Yes, I am on the board. And somebody like me will have to talk to somebody like you because I'm on the board. Not that I care that you have your Christmas decorations up, but I do care that I have to have the conversation. So help me help others like you not have to suffer through that, and take your Christmas decorations down, folks. Well, Nation, here are some things that you probably want to put on your calendar. We've got the 2025 ASHRAE Winter Conference taking place in Orlando, Florida. What a great place to go, Orlando, Florida. February 8th through February 12th. And this is a great conference. I'm going to try to be there. Hopefully, I will see you there too. And for more information about that, we will have all of that on our events page. Also, while you're in Orlando, Florida, maybe check out the 2025 AHR Expo taking place February 10th through 12th. And that is also in Orlando, sponsored by ASHRAE as well, and the Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration Institute. So we'll have all of that information on our events page. And the 2025 Utility Management Conference is taking place in Dallas, Texas, February 11th through 14th. And this is all about the water economy and how people can get together that are in the utility management, making sure that that is a resource that we all have for generations to come. This conference is jointly hosted by the Water Environment Federation and the American Waterworks Association. Nation, we're always going to have conferences and other items for you to go to by going to scalinguph2o.com/events. And Nation, I want to thank you because so many people will write into us and say there's another conference out there that you did not have on your events page. And we know how hard this job can be. We know that you are busy driving from account to account, and we want to make finding where you are going to go to your next conference easy. And of course, it couldn't be easier than going to scalinguph2o.com/events. You will see that there is a running calendar on that page, and you can put something into your calendar simply by clicking. You can go to the event registration page by clicking. Everything is a one-stop shop right there, thanks to the great staff here at the Scaling Up H2O podcast. Nation, I can't tell you how many wonderful people that I have met at conferences and how many great opportunities that I've been able to gain at these conferences. So please take a look. It's early enough in the calendar now that you might not have a lot going on towards the middle and the end of the year. Block that time off now because you never know how going to an event is going to pay you back. Well, Nation, speaking of going to an event that paid me back, that's the Association of Water Technology's annual conference. And this past year, I met our next guest, and he is going to teach us how to take some of the things that we are doing each and every day and maybe have a robot do it. Here's that interview. My lab partner today is Matt Monteleone of Roycebrook Media and Outsell Insight. Matt, welcome to the Scaling Up H2O podcast.
Hey, thanks so much, Trace. Thanks for having me.
I got the pleasure of meeting you at the Association of Water Technology's Business Owner Conference. You were one of the speakers there. I think you and I were in the lunch line together, and you graciously accepted coming on this podcast and talking about a few of the things that you were talking about there. But I think we also can expand on some of those things as well.
That sounds great. Yeah, looking forward to it. Yeah, it was great meeting you there. And I think there's a lot of opportunity to capitalize on AI for every industry, and water treatment is not an exception to that rule by any stretch.
Well, before we get to that, do you mind telling the Scaling Up Nation a bit about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Matt Monteleone. I own a company called Roycebrook Media and Outsell Insight. Essentially, what we do is we help B2B companies turbocharge their sales team so they can close more deals in less time. We really focus on account-based marketing. So when people want to get in front of high-value prospects, high-value targets, everything that's a relationship-based sale. We have a pretty innovative way to do that, to get them in front of those people and start those relationships so that their sales team is effective as humanly possible.
Well, I got to tell you, I was on the recipient end of that. You and I met, we exchanged business cards. And then I think you flew home that day. I was still there for the next 5 days. When I came back, sitting on my desk was a box of Titleist Pro V1s that had my name on them. And on the back, it said, "I'm not lost. I'm just hiding from Trace Blackmore."
That's right. That's right. So that's essentially one of our main strategies is sending hyper personalized gifts to people. We're hoping you were a golfer because I know there was a golf day the day after I flew out. They were talking about some big golf event. So I'm like, all right, I hope this makes sense. But yeah, we're all about creating those personal connections and personal relationships with the target prospects because at the end of the day, people do business with a know, like, and trust. So how do you build know, like, and trust from cold? It's really hard. You can't just use SEO or pay-per-click or social media or cold calling. It's pretty hard at that level. So you want to do something that really impresses people where they say, wow, this is how they treat their prospects. Imagine how they treat their clients.
Yeah, and it was great. And you were on my list to call, and I would have gotten to it, I'm sure, relatively quickly. But because I got that package, you were my next call.
There you go. Yeah, it works shockingly well. Our clients have nothing but success with this type of program. And it's all about identifying the right people, right? Rather than like a shotgun blast. It's laser targeted. Let's land your dream accounts and forget about the rest.
I'm curious, you do several things. What was the need that you saw that you said, I can create a company around this, I can fulfill this need?
Yeah. So that's a great question. So I started the company, 14 years ago, in my mom's basement. It's literally, the traditional entrepreneur story. I had like a couple $100 to my name. I'm like, what do I know how to do? And I was good at making websites. So I literally walked door to door to mom and pop shops and sold them little website packages. And a year and a half of that, I'm like, I can't build a real business this way. Like I have to figure out how to generate good leads online, like with slightly bigger companies with bigger budgets. And I spent the next probably year and a half doing every training program, working with coaches and mentors. And eventually we got a strategy that worked and went from doing $2,000 mom and pop sites, like $300,000 custom development projects. I went from by myself to, a sizable team, 25 or so at the peak between contractors and internal employees, and supposed to feel like I made it, but I actually hated it. It's like the scope creep was crazy. Moving a button 1 centimeter to the left and arguing about it with the client, it just wasn't worth it. So I'm like, we're so good at this lead generation thing. We should offer this as a service. That was probably 9 years ago-ish. We started offering that as a service and it eclipsed our development revenue, and we went all in, right? So we just became experts and honed our craft and became better and better at it. And that's basically all we do today is help B2B companies get in front of those high value targets.
I was talking to a friend of mine about what you do, and he said, I actually did something like this once. He had a prospect he wanted to get in front of. So he sent him a model helicopter and said that he would get the remote control when he accepted the appointment. Is that a good way to do that?
Yeah, why not? I mean, that's what's so great is this is a total doable strategy. It's something you can do yourself. But one of the things we help with is we do the individual prospect research. So we'll figure out exactly what they're into. We'll surf their LinkedIn, see what posts they have, see what they're interested in. And then it's consistency. Like that can work great, but that's, a one-off. And a lot of times our clients are too busy with proposals, with meetings, with trade shows. They don't have that time to consistently do the research and get these packages out and then follow up with these people. And we just handle all that for them.
Well, Matt, in addition to doing that, you are also a master in all things AI. And whenever I talk about AI on this podcast, you get a group of people that just can't wait to embrace everything that the machine can do for us. So we can do the things that we want to do. It can do all the stuff we don't want to do. But then there's also the camp that said, wait a second, I remember Terminator. I remember what made Arnold Schwarzenegger famous. And we are just feeding Skynet to take over the universe. So I don't even know where to start with that comment. So we're going to be talking about AI. How do we ensure that we're not ending the world from this podcast?
So I definitely think there are valid concerns with AI and making sure that it's done responsibly. And the big tech companies definitely have to be careful with what they're doing. But the genie's out of the bottle. It's not going back in, right? It's a reality. We have to live with it and embrace it. And I think in the interim, there's probably not too much real fear about Terminator taking over, although down the road, it's obviously a possibility if things go horribly wrong. But in the interim, a lot of people are worried about their jobs getting taken, right? They're really concerned they're going to be replaced by AI in some way, shape, or form. But I think what's going to happen first is people who know how to use AI are going to have a massive advantage. Those are the people that are going to get the jobs. Those are the people that are going to get promoted internally, right? They're going to have a massive advantage over the competition. Just like if someone knew how to use a computer when they first came out and everybody else says, I don't want to use that thing. It's not for me. It's not going to be a big deal. I don't want to learn it. So I think embracing this will give you a massive advantage in the marketplace in literally every job and every industry on earth.
Yeah, I'd rather use the abacus. Pull that out, right?
Yeah, right.
Well, I will tell you, I know I'm not utilizing AI to its full potential, but just the little bit that I use it, it saves me a tremendous amount of time. One of the things as an entrepreneur, as a business leader, I know I have so much in my head that if the rest of my team had access to, they could make, I would hope to say, better decisions, but at least they would have access to the things that I had to make the decisions. And so many times I'm the bottleneck. And one of the things I want to do and I'm trying to do is to get everything out and write procedures. So, not that everything's done, but let's say 75% of what we do is categorized in procedures. And I'll get a template out, I'll get just a few items out, and I will throw that into AI. I'll normally tell it to reference a few things so it knows the format that I want. And then it's done. And that's the part I don't like. So the fact that the robots are back there doing all that for me, I will let them do that all day long.
I think that's the right mindset to have, to embrace it, to use it to your advantage. And that's kind of what led me, down this path. I'm like, you have one of those days. I remember maybe 6 to 8 months ago when I really started getting into this part of the AI, the Notion concept that we're going to go over in more detail shortly. But I was like, I had one of those days. It was like I was talking to clients, then I was reading articles, I was watching YouTube videos to try to figure something out, answering emails, right? It never ends. 10 Zoom calls with clients, then internal staff. At the end of the day, you're like, I did so much, but how much can I actually remember? How much can I actually utilize? How organized is everything that I just did? And I'm like, this is scattered everywhere. To your point, I'm like, I have to figure out a way to make this more effective and more efficient. I'm like, there's got to be a way to do this. And that's what led me down the journey of the second brain, as I've called it and others have called it, is like, imagine you had a perfect copy of all of your knowledge, all of your experience, all lessons learned, all procedures, all SOPs in one spot that's not only accessible, but it's conversational, meaning like an AI has access to that, your knowledge, your specific knowledge base, and then can regurgitate and create things based on that. It's just so revolutionary.
Yeah, back in October when we met, that's what we were talking about. And I was just fascinated with that. I listened to all these podcasts. I tried to read about 100 books a year, but that information doesn't go anywhere. And you're like, oh, but it can. And that's what we're going to talk about today. And I'm so excited to do that. Now, you brought this product up before. It's called Notion. This is how you started creating your second brain. So maybe we just talk about what that is.
Yeah, so Notion is essentially like a customizable database. So you can make anything you want. So it doesn't matter if you're an artist, if you're a water treater, if you're the CEO, if you're a frontline worker, it doesn't matter who you are or what you do every day. We all have a lot of information that we consume on a daily basis. So Notion is almost like a smart database. It's a customizable database. You can set it up any way you want. And then there's an AI component to it that allows you to have like a chat GPT type conversation and access that specific knowledge.
So let's say I have an account with Notion. I just listened to a podcast. How do those things interface?
Yeah, so what's cool is you do need some third-party tools to really maximize Notion to its fullest potential. Because essentially what you can do is you can train the AI on everything that you consume. So let's just say you had a podcast. There's a lot of tools that will transcribe that. Some of them have the transcription already in the podcast link. But even if not, there's a lot of tools that'll transcribe that for you. And then you feed that into Notion, into the database. And now all the information inside that podcast is accessible to Notion. The same thing with books. You get the PDF file. Right now, all the information from that book, 10, 20 years of someone's expertise that they basically compacted into this book, is now available for the AI to access and reference. So you're kind of building not only all of your knowledge, but all of the knowledge of people that you like, you trust, and the content you consume from them.
That's super exciting. I can't tell you how many books I've read, and I knew I read something. I knew there was a quote or there was a procedure. I couldn't remember the book. I couldn't remember if I did remember the book, I didn't remember where it was. So once we have all these things in there, it's instantly searchable.
Exactly right. And to your point, there's an extra plugin that you may get called Reader or Readwise. There's two different apps from the same company. And that allows you to basically highlight anything on any page of the internet you're looking at and take some quick notes. So Notion not only can capture the entire page, but it can capture the highlighted areas and your notes on them so that it knows what you think is important and how you're digesting the information. So when you go back and ask Notion, hey, what was that article I read about XYZ? And I think I took a note somewhere. What were those 3 things I took notes on, or the 10 things? And it'll spit it out for you.
Well, if somebody signed on to Notion today, they would have pretty much a blank white screen with some menu items along the left side. And then they probably have no idea what to do after that. So, is there advice for somebody who's listening and saying, hey, this is something I at least want to look into? What's the first step?
So honestly, I think YouTube is probably the best step, right? So many people have put out so much great content on Notion, how you build systems and processes, how you build automations. And you almost want to try to reverse engineer your day. The technology assists your day. It's not like you have to recreate the wheel, right? And recreate new habits. You want to kind of fit it into your normal routine. So I think that's a great place to start. Number two, there's a lot of third parties that sell Notion templates pre-configured. So that's essentially what I did. First, I tried to build it from scratch, this blank white thing, and I'm watching the YouTube videos, and 5, 10 hours in, I'm like, I have nothing. I have like, 1% of what I want. I'm like, there has to be someplace I can buy something pre-configured. And there was. There's tons of them, and they're cheap. Some of them are $20, $50, $100. The one that was closest to what I wanted. And then I just customized it from there. But it saved me so much time just going with something that was pre-configured and modifying it from there.
Do you have any YouTube videos?
I have a couple of YouTube videos on my YouTube channel. It's relatively new. I'm following your footsteps here, trying to put out some good content. It's called Mind of Monty. I've gone by Monty my whole life because there was 10 Matts in every class growing up. All right, so my last name's Monteleone. I became Monty. So Mind of Monty is the YouTube channel. It's very new, but I do have some videos on Notion and also some business growth tips and strategies on there.
We'll make sure to get those links so people can find those very easily. So let's say somebody looked at YouTube, they're starting to get started. What's the first thing you start with? Is it I'm just going to how do I start my week? How do I start my day? How should you look at this landscape?
Yeah, I would look at what you do on a routine basis that you can use AI to complement. So let's just pretend you're having a number of Zoom meetings every day or Teams meetings. There's a number of AI tools like Fireflies is one of them. That's the one that I use. It's an AI note taker. And there's a program that feeds it right into Notion. So now not only do you have everything you're building inside of Notion and all the content that you're consuming, but you also have all your meeting notes. Right. So that's a really powerful way to leverage Notion right out of the gate is an organized area that can not only keep track of everything you do and consume, but also all your meeting notes. So that's a great one if that's something you do on a daily basis. So if someone wanted to start fresh from Notion, first of all, definitely YouTube to get some basic knowledge of how the program actually works. And then I think buying a template and starting to customize it. But you can do a couple different exercises. One that's really easy is just to start to add all of the articles that you're consuming on a regular basis, right? So you probably read different articles on different news outlets. You probably watch YouTube videos. You maybe even want to save some tweets. It's almost like a repository of everything that you do on a daily basis. So that's a good way to get into a routine of just starting to log everything and add it to Notion because you're building this repository of information. So that's a great place to start. You can always customize it and move it and access it later, but at least it's there.
Matt, we have over 400 episodes for the Scaling Up H2O podcast, and people will write questions in. A lot of them are in previous episodes, and I think you and I were chatting a couple of months ago that we could create some sort of repository where somebody could have a chat with a bot and it will say, hey, well, these are in these episodes and these are what it says. Is that something Notion can do?
100%. That's totally possible. That's absolutely doable. And I do think, projecting into the future a little bit here, not just Notion, but other AI tools, and some of these already exist. I don't know how great they are quite yet, but I can see influential people, artists, actors, actresses, whoever, creating their own sort of AI bot that's their personality, their experience, right? And people maybe selling access to being able to have conversations with that digital copy of themselves. And I definitely think that's going to be a big thing moving forward. They actually did that with somebody, I forget who it was. They added a ton of this person's literature and books and content, and then allowed people to have a conversation with it as like a test to see if they felt like they were talking to the actual author.
That's amazing. Now, I like to define terms. So we said the word bot. Can you define exactly what that is?
Yeah, so a bot is essentially really like a program, right, that's executing different tasks in order. So a chat bot, for example, is a bot, a computer program that allows you to have like a real conversation back and forth with this computer, right, rather than an actual person.
Yeah, if you returned anything on Amazon, you've probably gone through a bot.
No question. And I think the big tech companies are embracing this. They're super excited. And that's, one industry that's going to be massively disrupted is the customer service industry, because why employ thousands of people? It's going to be their mindset anyway. When the bot has access to every conversation that's ever existed, knows how the problems were solved best, it can analyze all that data. And sadly, possibly sadly, I think there is going to be a time when you call up Verizon and you're like, hey, are you a human or AI? And they're like, AI. And you're like, thank God, someone who can actually help me.
That would be a mindset change, but you're right. If you have access to all that, hopefully all that information helps us get better. But let's actually talk about the risk of having all of that information out there. So I'd say I built a successful company, and there's certain things that I have done that others haven't that have made me successful. So now I start loading all of these things up. They're in AI. My team can reference them. Maybe I don't even have to write processes anymore. I say, hey, write this process like Trace Blackmore will, and it will write it probably better than I will come up with because it has access to all the other ones. But now it's out there and it's vulnerable. What are those vulnerabilities and how can we protect ourselves?
Yeah, that's a great question. This is one of the number one questions I always get it when I speak on AI is like, I don't want to put my proprietary information out there in the world. And it's totally understandable. So Notion and some of the other big AI programs claim that they don't train the AI on your personal data, which I'm sure is questionable at best if they actually do or don't. But on the premium version of Notion, it does claim that anything you put in there is siloed inside of your own database. But obviously, there's a risk there, right? There's been hacks on everything on planet Earth. But what I think the reality is, in the future, especially, and the internet kind of ushered in this age of information, everybody realistically has access to the same information. Like, sure, you might have something a little bit proprietary, but the reality is someone else out there has that. And if not, they can obtain it if they just spent enough time researching. So it's going to be less about having the information. And now it's all about implementation. Like your ability to implement is going to be massively more valuable. To be able to take something that you learned and make it a reality is probably the most valuable skill, I think, in the future. Because even if you think about it, I think about my young kids. I'm like, what's school going to look like, in 10 years? Like I have a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old. I'm like, school's going to look so different than it did when I was there. And I think that implementation skill is going to be so hard because everyone's going to have access to the same information, the same tools. So what makes you different, what makes you successful is that ability to implement what you're actually learning.
So it sounds like you're saying everybody just needs to relax. You think you have secret sauce, but it's really Thousand Island dressing.
That's a great way to describe it. And listen, some people do have the secret sauce. Like, sure, if someone got the secret Coca-Cola recipe, could they replicate Coca-Cola? Sure, they could. But does that mean they're going to be able to get any market share when Coca-Cola has this dominant brand? They're in every store on planet Earth. You know what I mean? Like, it's not going to be possible just because you have the information. They're going to be able to replicate the same success.
It's a great point. And of course, you can't advance anything without there being some sort of risk. And I can't believe there are just people out there that just spend their time thinking, how can I infiltrate or harm somebody else? So yeah, get a better job, people. Don't do that. Imagine what you could do if you were on the good side.
That's right. That's right. Stay on the good side and make sure the robots stay on the good side as well.
That's right. That's right. Or maybe we're just all batteries and we're dreaming this right now. You have no idea.
That's could be. It might have already happened. If it goes the way of the Matrix, that's what the reality is.
Matt, can you describe your day to day and how you're using these tools?
So if I look at my day, there's so many different things I do on a daily basis, like most business owners or business leaders or anyone in general, right? So I'm doing everything from having meetings, taking sales calls, thinking of different ideas, creating content, the list kind of never ends. And then watching videos, reading books, there's so much that comes on a daily basis. And I was thinking about this a lot. I'm like, if you look back even 500 years ago or thousands of years ago, we consume so much more content today than we ever did before. I don't think from an evolutionary perspective, we were designed to consume this much content on a daily basis. Like even 500 years ago, if you wanted to get your hands on one book, think about how much money that would cost because someone was literally handwriting it, copying it. So you actually had to be wealthy to get your hands on something like that. So what's happening now is we're bombarded with more information than we can possibly process. And I don't think our brain was designed to do that, right? It just wasn't. So we now have the ability using AI to leverage all that content, leverage all that knowledge, leverage all that wisdom and experience in a way that we never could before.
Let's shift gears to water treatment because I know you work with some water treatment companies. So, a typical water treater is going to plan their week. They're going to figure out where they're going to go during that week. Maybe they're going to send some messages or make some phone calls saying, hey, I'm going to be here on Tuesday at 8 o'clock. Is that a good time? Can we confirm that? Then there are all the things that they've got to research. Maybe what happened last month with their service? What happened the last 6 months? Are there any issues they need to look out for? Is there any way that they need to load their vehicle because they need to do some sort of specialized work they don't normally do? All the things that we probably take for granted, but we really have to take time to think about, or we might get there and now it costs us real time because, oops, I forgot that thing. So, with that setup, how do we utilize something like Notion to help?
Yeah, and another great question. Because if you think about all the things like a water treatment person has to do every single day, you're traveling to clients, site inspections, maintenance, equipment checks, like safety protocols, like you said, taking samples. There's so much that goes into it. So, what Notion could do when set up properly is provide the resources to essentially ensure that you limit the mistakes. Right? You're more efficient, you're more effective, you know what's going to be happening before you even get there, and then you're logging all the information. And what's cool about the AI is it can make assessments based on historical data. So it might know that this particular metric was still in the normal range, but on the lower end of normal. So that before you go, you ask Notion, what should you know about this visit coming up? It's going to say, hey, last time this metric was on the lower end of normal. So it's very likely it's going to need service or it's going to need more of this or more of that. So it can actually be like a tool that you can communicate with to get an understanding of what's coming and what might happen based on historical trends, if that makes sense.
Do you think we will ever get to the point where if a customer has a question of something that's going on with their system, we almost become Amazon customer service and they log in and say, hey, my conductivity is low in my cooling tower, and it then comes back and tells them what to do?
That would be cool. I mean, I'm sure there's some companies that have someone on staff that could service it themselves, for example, right? And you're really, like you said, the customer service vehicle, because there's a lot of those type of businesses, not in this realm, but in other realms that kind of help walk you through different things. The answer is probably maybe. I mean, who knows? Some people are never going to want to do that or learn how to do it or have the skill, but it's totally possible.
Well, Matt, I have to tell you, that's scary to me because I've had 20 plus years learning how to answer a question like that. But then if I really think about it, if it was such a simple question, like they needed to plug something in, and now I can just do the higher level stuff, I think that's a benefit. So I guess it really depends on, as you said, how it's used. I guess also the benefit or the risk is we have to make sure that that never replaces the relationship that we have. And I'm sure you probably have some stories where some companies replaced people with, I'm going to say robots for lack of a better term, and it probably wasn't the best customer service. Can you tell us anything about that?
Yeah, no question. I mean, I have some personal examples, but you've seen it with big companies for sure. I mean, AI in its current form is relatively new, but there was these chatbots that just used some simple logic in the past with pre-programmed responses, and you know it when you reach out to Comcast, Xfinity, Verizon, right? You get these little chatbots that give you the most simple explanation of what you need to do next. And it's so frustrating because you're like, I know what I'm doing. I know I don't have to just plug this back in, right? But the AI, it wasn't really AI, right? It was just pre-programmed responses. It wasn't smart enough to know that you know what you're doing. You basically can prove that you know what you're doing and you've done the initial troubleshooting because it just brings every single person through the same track, right? There's no intelligence there before. It's the same track. And I think a lot of those big tech companies, if you look on like their ratings online for customer service, they're horrible. Right? Like anybody who has to call Comcast or any of these companies, you hate it. Like you dread it because you know you're gonna talk to a pre-recorded thing, or if you do the online chat. But I think that's going to be getting better and better, and already has because of AI. Because now it's more intelligent. It's referencing what the issues could be, and it's actually thinking to a degree rather than just regurgitating standard issue information.
One of my colleagues was showing me that they have set up geofencing. And as soon as one of their representatives is on site, then their entire computer populates all the things that they need in order to service that account, in addition to starting a timer so they can see how long it took to service the account. And then it's taking that against what it should take to service the account. And that alerts them of, maybe something was missed because it was supposed to be a 2-hour window. They were there for 15 minutes. Or maybe it was a 2-hour window and they were there for 6 hours. Okay, maybe we need to train this person. That just floored me. I have no clue how to put any of that stuff together, but I'm sure that's the kind of stuff that we are talking about. How would somebody get started by just thinking, what are the things that maybe I don't have a handle on that would help the team, and start making a list to start talking with somebody like yourself to developing this AI?
Yeah, I think going through like this mental checklist of what are the issues that come up most regularly. Of course, you could search your email, or if you have a project management tool, you can go through there and try to get an understanding of what happens most frequently. What issues do we face on a consistent basis? Are we always over time? Are we always late? Now, if you have a program like you just described, that becomes much easier because the data is readily available. But if the data is not readily available, you're going to have to do a little bit of research and digging and begin to build out a template or a framework for what you want to measure. What gets measured gets managed. So you want to start to figure out what you need to measure so that you can be more effective in every area of the business.
As you were developing some of these tools for yourself and your company, what's something that everybody's probably going to experience in the negative that they should just avoid, and they don't have to experience it because you're going to tell them not to?
When it comes to AI, I think the big negative is just being absolutely overwhelmed.
Okay.
People just don't know what to do. I remember when AI first came to the forefront. It existed before that, but realistically, like ChatGPT, I feel like was the first, generative AI that was available to the public. And everyone just kind of like, wow, this thing can write a letter or make a poem, or like, it was like a game. It didn't seem like it could do anything that would benefit me in a big way besides just kind of parlor tricks almost. So I think getting into AI in the beginning is so overwhelming because it's just limitless. It's basically your imagination. So I definitely believe that going through some training program, if there's an industry specific one for each industry, someone has probably already designed that. So if you're in welding, there's probably a welding one. If you're in commercial construction, someone probably on YouTube has a course or a training program or a video that will explain what's effective in that particular industry. And I'm always all about that. Go to the source. Rather than make your own mistakes, try to find someone that's already knows where the potholes and the pitfalls are and just learn from them.
So I'll use ChatGPT a little bit. I'll use Microsoft's Copilot a little bit. And I've noticed that Copilot, you don't have to put all the codes in that you do for ChatGPT. Can you explain why you do with one over the other?
So I feel like ChatGPT has done a good job of allowing like third-party apps to be developed, right? So there's a lot of plugins that you can get for ChatGPT that make it more powerful. I think they kind of thought of it almost like Apple, the original, iTunes or the Play Store type of thing on Android, where you can customize and build what you want. Or I think Copilot's like, this is our ecosystem. This is how it's going to work. This is how we're going to build it. I don't think there's anything wrong with either structure, but I like that ChatGPT allows you to kind of customize it for what you want. But that also brings a downside, right? It's a little bit maybe harder to use out of the gate because it doesn't have all those pre-configured systems that you might need.
What are the top items that everybody needs to stop doing themselves right now and start getting AI to do?
Any type of reporting, reports used to take us forever because clients would want different reports and different metrics. And you're like, we don't have that report pre-configured. So you're literally building these from scratch. And it's super time consuming, right? Building out really good reports and tracking data. But having all the data inside of an AI system allows you to say, all right, let me visualize the data as a pie chart. Visualize it over the last 12 months over time and show me the month over month change. So So it just gives you the ability to like talk to the chart almost and have it created in real time. And that is such a massive time savings for us and a lot of companies because you don't have any data. Like I said, what gets measured gets managed. You don't have accurate data. You can't make any great decisions. You're just flying by the seat of your pants, right? You're going with gut, which can work sometimes, but more times than not, you need data. So I think keeping track of data is probably one of the most important things people should do.
As you started moving your data over for your company into AI, your people most likely are a little resistant. How did you sell that properly? And then what was the iteration where they're now saying, hey, this is an amazing tool?
Yeah, I think every human being on earth, when confronted with change, gets a little bit apprehensive. But what most people do in every area of life is like, what's in it for me? Like that's the mindset that I think most people have when they're presented with anything. So I wanted to really make it clear that what's in it for them is to make their lives easier, right? Make their lives better, make their jobs easier, make them more efficient, get rid of the busy work that is boring to them, and so they can focus on more high level tasks. So I think framing it around this is going to make your life easier and allow you to do more of the work that you enjoy was a way that you can get people to embrace it more quickly.
Well, I asked the same question I asked earlier, but a little bit differently. So, what are some of the things that people need to stop doing in their personal life that just makes life easier?
Yeah, so Notion is kind of my life operating system at this point. I use it for business, but I also use it personally because there's so many things that happen on a personal level every single day. So I'm using AI, like I said, in every area of my life. I have all of my goals in there and a progress bar to see how close I am to achieving my goal. And just like a video game, everybody loves to see the progress bar go up, right? So you feel like you're gamifying your life, which leads to achieving your goals more regularly. I've got all my travel plans in there. I've got everything from gift ideas. My wife or kids mention something they want. I log it in this section I have called gift ideas. So then my wife's birthday comes up. I don't have to try to remember what she wanted. I literally just go to the board and I can see exactly what's there and mark it as purchased. And then I have a section on books I want to consume, articles, podcasts, videos that I'm really interested in, but I haven't had a chance to get to. So a lot of times we're like bookmarking different websites, and then we have something on Audible, we have something on YouTube, we've got a playlist every single place, but this is like one spot for everything. So if I have a few minutes to kill, or if I'm driving, I can go to the audio section right on my Notion so I can just listen. Or if I have some time to watch, I can go to the video section and consume that content. So I think it just gives you the ability to organize your life in such a better way than I've ever had before.
So, if there was just one message that you could get across to all of our listeners today, what would you want that message to be?
I would say the biggest thing I want to leave everyone with is that embracing new technology doesn't have to be scary, right? It can really be empowering. And it's not that different than when smartphones came out. I saw so many people say, I'm never going to get one of these. I don't need these. I just want to call and text. Right now, 99.9% of those people all have smartphones, right? And they made their lives better and easier. So everything's overwhelming when you first try it. But with just a little bit of effort, a little bit of practice, right? It just becomes second nature like anything else in life. And I think we all have 24 hours in a day, and we don't know how long we're all on this planet. So I want to squeeze out the juice of every minute of the day and be as happy, as effective, as productive as humanly possible. And I think AI can assist with all of those goals.
So, if somebody's listening today, they want to talk more about the things that you are doing, how can they get in touch with you?
Yeah, the easiest way would be to reach me at monty@roycebrookmedia.com, which is my email address. They could also visit my website, which is Royce Brook Media. Royce is like Rolls Royce, roycebrookmedia.com. And they can check out my YouTube channel as well, which is Mind of Monty.
We will make sure to have all of those links on our show notes page. I've got a few lightning round questions if you're game.
Let's do it.
All right. You and I found out at the beginning of this interview that we are both Back to the Future fans. So we are going to get into the DeLorean. We are going to set the time circuits back to your very first day as a consultant. What advice would you give yourself?
I would tell myself to embrace the technology faster. Kind of like I described before, when I first got into AI, I really just thought it was cool that you could have it create stories or write articles. I didn't really try to understand how powerful this technology could be or how it could affect every area of not only my life, but the life of everyone I know in the entire world. So I think I got in a little bit slower than I should have. I should have embraced it from day one. I should have just decided that this is here to stay and I need to learn as much as I possibly can about it. So that's probably what I would tell myself is don't delay.
What are the last 3 books that you've read?
Last 3 books, I read Atomic Habits by James Clear. I read Buy Back Your Time by Dan Martell. Love that book. And then The Magic of Thinking Big by David J. Schwartz. Great books, all of them. I love them all.
And then obviously Hollywood's going to hear this podcast. They're going to make a movie about your life. Who do you want playing you?
I'm trying to think who I want playing me and who I think would play me are probably 2 different things. Jesse Eisenberg, the guy who was in The Social Network, who played Mark Zuckerberg. I've been compared to him a couple times, so I guess he would probably be the guy that would play me, I guess.
I like that choice. That's a good one. A final question. You now have the ability to speak with anybody throughout history. Who would it be with and why?
That's a tough one. If I only had one choice, it would be really difficult, but I'd probably go with Nikola Tesla. I think the guy was ahead of his time. I mean, he had some crazy ideas that probably are not real, but he also did things that were revolutionary at the time, and he was pushing the boundaries of space and time right at a time when other people weren't doing that. So I'd love to have a conversation with him and just get his thoughts on the world and how it is now. If he could come to our time, right, I'd love to hear what he thinks about current life, but otherwise I'd love to hear his theories on life and science.
You can start working on that DeLorean. Maybe you can meet him someday.
Hey, I'm all about it.
Matt, thank you for coming on the Scaling Up H2O podcast. Thanks for filling our minds with what's possible and letting us know that, okay, it's not all scary. There's a lot of benefit that can be gained from it.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Well, Matt, thanks again for coming on the Scaling Up H2O podcast. And Nation, I learned a lot. Matt and I are actually working together. He is helping me automate some of the things that we're doing in this podcast, so we have more time to bring you great content like this. Really enjoy working with him. And of course, you will see the result of that from this interview of all the things that we are doing together. Now, one of the items that he turned me on to a couple of months ago was a service called Notion. And we have an affiliate link with Notion. So if you want to try it out, you can go to scalinguph2o.com/Notion and you can see what we're talking about. And as Matt mentioned, he's got some YouTube channels. We're going to make sure that we have all of those linked in our show notes page so you don't have to start from scratch. You can see what Matt is doing, and we'll also link some of the YouTube channels that he likes to go to that aren't necessarily his, so you can be head and shoulders above where Matt was when he started. But I did want to mention a couple of things that I use that do make my life easier. And he mentioned Fireflies, and that is such a great note taker for Zoom. How many Zoom calls are we on now? And how many times do we have action items that we have to do and we need to remember to do them? Well, at the beginning of this episode, I told you I was on the association board where I live, and we have quarterly meetings. I'm the president, but I also take notes because I want to make sure we get everything done. And how do I take notes? Well, I use Fireflies, and we have an affiliate link for them as well. So you can go to scalinguph2o.com/Fireflies and find out a little bit more about them. But let me tell you, you start that up, people need to know that it's on there. And you say, hey, I'm just going to take a transcript, and then it's going to form its own summary in form of notes. It is fantastic. And at the very end, it has action items. And it says, this person agreed to do these things. I will not go on a Zoom call without that when we're having regular meetings. So I highly recommend you look for ways that the little robots behind the scenes can do some of the work so you don't have to do. And then the last one that I want to mention, because I love this device, it's called the Plaud, Plaud, and it's like a thick credit card. I actually keep it in my wallet. And whenever I am at a meeting, I can put that down. It links up to the Bluetooth in my phone, and it records the transcript of the meeting that we have, and it uses AI to generate notes. It is amazing how it formats notes. Just like Firefly, it gives me summary items, action items, things that I have to do, but it also creates a mind map of the actual meeting. And I just love mind maps. When I'm writing content, I use mind maps all the time. So I just think it's neat that it does that. And of course, we have an affiliate link for you there. That is scalinguph2o.com/Plaud, Plaud. Nation, trust me, you will love this device. You will not have another meeting without that being open on the table. It just helps me so much. And then, as Matt was telling us, I can load that into Notion, and now I can search all these things. It is fantastic. Well, Nation, something else or somebody else that's fantastic is our friend James McDonald. And here is a brand new What Do You Know?
Hello and welcome to What Do You Know? The game show where we find out what do you know about industrial water treatment, drop by drop. So pump up your brain, take out that test kit of knowledge, and prepare to answer this week's question on What Do You Know? Today's question is, what are the 5 parameters used to calculate the Langelier Saturation Index, or LSI? Calcium hardness, total alkalinity, pH, skin temperature, and lastly, total dissolved solids, or conductivity if used to estimate the TDS. I'm James McDonald, and thanks for playing along with us. Stay tuned for next week's episode of What Do You Know?
Thanks, James. And thank you, Scaling Up Nation, for listening to this latest episode of the Scaling Up H2O podcast. Of course, we're going to have a brand new episode for you next week. In the meantime, take your Christmas decorations if they're not down yet. And if they are, then find something new that you can do that's going to change everything. Hey, that's not a small order, is it? Nation, when you put your mind to thinking about how you can do something differently, that's when the mind comes unlocked, and it is amazing what we can do when we just start trying to think that way. I can't wait to hear what you come up with, and I will be back with you next Friday. Want to ensure you're fully prepared for the Certified Water Technologist examination? Our CWT prep course provides you with the tools and knowledge you need. From detailed study guides to a 100-question practice exam, we've got you covered. Visit scalinguph2o.com/CWT prep and start your journey to certification.